The room fell into an immediate, heavy silence the moment Judge Florence Pan leaned forward, his voice cutting through the tense air. "Congresswoman Crockett," he began, sharp and precise, "can you explain how your proposed policy addresses the evident flaws in federal oversight?" The question wasn't just a request for clarity. It carried an edge, a challenge designed to unsettle, to assert dominance over the room. Cameras zoomed in on every face, every reaction caught in high definition, while the audience collectively held its breath. Every whisper of movement, every shuffle of papers, seemed amplified under the intensity of the moment. Crockett's eyes lifted steadily to meet his, her posture calm yet resolute. The silence stretched, almost tangible, as Pan's gaze attempted to intimidate, to rattle the Congresswoman into a falter. Microphones captured the subtle shifts in tone, the faint catch of his breath when he noticed her unwavering composure. For a heartbeat, the courtroom felt suspended in time, every observer aware that this was more than a simple exchange. It was a test of authority, intellect, and poise under pressure. Around them, the audience remained frozen, caught between anticipation and disbelief. Some leaned forward, eyes wide, sensing the gravity of the confrontation. Others exchanged glances, murmurs restrained by the oppressive hush that had settled. The cameras shifted, capturing Crockett's calm expression against Pan's pointed intensity, the contrast almost cinematic in its clarity. Every frame told a story, a rising political figure meeting scrutiny head-on, unshaken, unflinching. The air thickened with expectation, each second stretching longer than the last. Observers sensed that this moment could define reputations, shift perceptions, and set a precedent for what courage looks like in high-stakes political arenas. Crockett's quiet presence radiated a confidence that neither snapped nor bowed, making the tension almost unbearable. Every eye followed her, every mind braced for the response that could either falter under pressure or shatter expectations. And then the pause, long enough to feel monumental. Every person in the room knew something significant was about to happen. The question hung, a razor-sharp challenge in the air. But Crockett's resolve made it clear. The answer would not just meet the question, it would leave an unforgettable mark. But what Jasmine said next didn't just answer the question, it left the entire room reeling. The hearing had begun as a standard panel discussion, designed to examine policy implementation and oversight at the federal level. Experts were meant to exchange ideas, clarify procedures, and provide insight for lawmakers and the public alike. But almost immediately the tone shifted. Judge Florence Pan, with his calculated precision, transformed what was supposed to be a civil discourse into a high-stakes examination. Every question was layered, each word chosen to test not just knowledge, but confidence, authority, and resilience. His intent was clear, to place Crockett under a microscope, to measure her every response against expectations often skewed by gender, race, and political perception. As the questioning continued, Crockett became the undeniable focal point. Every assertion she made, every carefully reasoned point she presented, was met with a subtle eyebrow raise, a challenging inflection, or a probing follow-up. The room, once filled with collective anticipation, now felt like a stage where she was the sole performer under the unforgiving spotlight. Cameras pivoted and zoomed, catching each nuance. The slight tension in her jaw, the steadying breath before she spoke, the unshakable clarity in her eyes. Observers could sense that this was not merely a test of policy knowledge. It was a trial of her presence, her authority, and her capacity to navigate scrutiny without yielding. The emotional tension was palpable. There was an undercurrent of injustice that few could ignore. Here was a woman, highly qualified and meticulously prepared, facing a scrutiny that carried implicit weight beyond mere professional assessment. Gendered power dynamics lingered in every carefully calibrated question, every subtle interruption. The unspoken message was clear. In this room, authority was often presumed to lie elsewhere. And yet, Crockett's quiet resolve did not waver. With each moment, the strength of her composure deepened, creating a tension that the audience felt in their own chests. There were subtle racial undertones as well, not overt but present in the expectations, the tone, the glance that lingered longer than it might on others. Crockett was acutely aware of these layers, yet she did not flinch. Instead, she let her preparation, her experience, and her unwavering commitment to truth guide her responses. Her legal expertise and advocacy background were her armor, shaping every carefully chosen word. Every syllable she spoke carried the weight of years spent navigating systems that often underestimated voices like hers, and each answer subtly dismantled assumptions before they could take hold. Around her, the panelists and audience absorbed the scene with mounting anticipation, the quiet hum of shifting chairs, the faint scratching of pens, and the low murmur of observers' reactions all combined to underscore the intensity. Each moment stretched longer, heavy with the promise of revelation. Crockett's poised responses not only addressed the questions but also began to assert a broader narrative. Competence, clarity, and integrity are not diminished by challenge. They are amplified under scrutiny. The stakes could not have been higher. This was more than a hearing. It was a demonstration of resilience against pressure, a subtle confrontation with systemic bias, and a moment where dignity met scrutiny head-on. Every eye in the room was drawn to her, every mind poised to witness whether she would bend under the weight or stand unwavering. She paused, and in that pause, every eye in the room fixed on her. Judge Florence Pan had built a reputation that commanded attention. To many, he was the embodiment of intellect and meticulous preparation, a figure whose courtroom presence radiated authority. His reputation was anchored not only in his legal acumen, but in the subtle, deliberate ways he exerted control over proceedings. Colleagues and observers often noted his strategic interruptions, the almost imperceptible timing of his questions, and the careful modulation of his tone, all designed to keep witnesses, panelists or attorneys slightly off balance. To the untrained eye, it appeared seamless, natural even. But beneath the polished exterior was a man who understood the mechanics of dominance, the power of perception, and the psychological sway of intimidation. Pan's history of hearings and panels revealed a consistent pattern. In prior sessions, he had zeroed in on inconsistencies with surgical precision, turning minor hesitations into significant critiques. Reports of witnesses leaving rooms shaken were not uncommon. Subtle gestures, pointed pauses, and strategically framed questions had long been his tools. Each moment seemed benign when observed superficially, but anyone familiar with his methods recognized a choreography of control. His public poise, calm, collected, almost benevolent, masked a reliance on the latent fear he could invoke. He had mastered the art of managing optics, ensuring that observers saw fairness, rationality, and authority, even while subtly exploiting vulnerabilities. He had a long history of this duality, publicly measured, privately exacting. In hearings where he sensed uncertainty, he did not merely wait for errors. He engineered them. Questions were phrased to trap, interruptions timed to disrupt thought processes, and his gaze could pivot from inquisitive to scrutinizing in an instant. Legal scholars and journalists often commented on his strategic brilliance, noting that Pan's ability to maintain credibility while subtly controlling outcomes was a rare skill. To the casual audience, he appeared confident, authoritative, and fair. But the insiders knew the calculus behind each word, each pause, each slight inflection. A man whose reputation was as much built on perception as on principle. This pattern of dominance extended beyond hearings. Public commentary, statements, and panels revealed an individual attuned to optics, aware of the media lens, and keenly strategic about which moments to emphasize. He understood how to frame debates so that his authority remained unchallenged, how to shape narratives that amplified his credibility, and how to highlight the weaknesses of others without appearing overtly aggressive. This skill had served him well over the years, earning him both respect and quiet wariness from peers and subordinates. Few dared to confront him head-on, and fewer still had succeeded in doing so without consequence. Yet, beneath the layers of control, there were subtle cracks. His reliance on intimidation and expectation of deference meant that when faced with someone unshakable, someone whose composure did not bend under scrutiny, the usual mechanisms of authority faltered. The very tactics that had made him formidable, the interruptions, the calculated pauses, the careful framing, became predictable to those who could recognize the patterns. And it was precisely in this predictable structure that an opponent could find leverage. Judge Pan's public persona had long suggested invulnerability. He was composed, commanding, respected by many, yet there remained a vulnerability hidden beneath the surface. His authority relied on others yielding to pressure, on deference and subtle fear. A witness or panelist who refused to be intimidated, who matched poise with knowledge, could destabilize the equilibrium he so carefully maintained. And history showed that while Pan had faced challenges before, few had confronted him with the combination of intellect, preparation, and unshakable confidence that could truly challenge his dominance. But Pan's usual authority was about to collide with a force he hadn't faced before: Jasmine Crockett's unshakable truth. Jasmine Crockett's story began far from the glare of political spotlights. Growing up in a neighborhood where opportunities were often scarce, she quickly learned the value of perseverance and self-advocacy. Her parents instilled in her a belief that dignity and hard work could transcend circumstance, lessons that would guide her through every challenge she faced. From an early age, Crockett displayed a precocious sense of justice, a curiosity about the systems that govern society, and a determination to speak out when inequities arose. Her academic path was marked by discipline and focus. Long nights poring over textbooks, navigating complex legal theories, and mastering public speaking became second nature. She immersed herself in understanding laws, policies, and civic structures, recognizing that knowledge would be her most potent tool in any arena where power and influence converged. Even as she excelled academically, Crockett was acutely aware of the subtle biases that awaited her, assumptions about her capabilities, interruptions designed to diminish her voice, and the pervasive underestimation of women of color in professional spaces. These early experiences did not deter her. They became fuel, forging resilience and clarity of purpose. Entering the legal profession, Crockett faced a landscape where authority often tried to overshadow truth. She encountered courtroom dynamics where her insights were questioned more rigorously than those of her peers, where her ideas were interrupted or dismissed, and where recognition required not just skill, but unwavering persistence. Yet she thrived in these environments, cultivating a reputation for meticulous preparation, persuasive argumentation, and unshakable composure. Clients and colleagues alike saw her as a voice for accountability, someone unafraid to confront systemic flaws and to advocate fiercely for fairness. Her advocacy work extended beyond courtrooms. Crockett became a tireless champion for communities often ignored by power structures. She navigated political and social systems with precision, learning to translate legal knowledge into actionable policy initiatives. Every speech, every debate, every legislative effort honed her ability to articulate complex ideas under pressure. She learned not only to anticipate counter-arguments but to transform scrutiny into an opportunity to showcase intellect and integrity. Each challenge she faced reinforced a simple truth: preparation and principle were stronger than intimidation or derision. When Crockett entered Congress, she brought with her a history steeped in resilience and purpose. The political arena, often hostile to dissenting voices, particularly those of women of color, became yet another platform to demonstrate that competence and courage could not be ignored. She faced interruptions, dismissals, and politically motivated critiques, yet she remained steadfast. Each moment of scrutiny, each attempt to silence her, only sharpened her resolve. She learned to read the room, to measure tone and timing, and to deliver responses that combined precision, authority, and emotional resonance. Throughout her career, Crockett cultivated an unshakable confidence rooted in experience. She knew the weight of every word, the power of silence, and the strategic advantage of measured responses. Her professional journey was not a linear ascent, but a series of calculated moves, informed by encounters with bias, adversity, and the need to defend principles against formidable opposition. By the time she stood before Judge Florence Pan, Crockett was armed not just with knowledge, but with an intuition honed by years of navigating systems designed to test her resolve. Her preparation was comprehensive. Every potential line of questioning, every procedural nuance, every subtle tactic of intimidation had been anticipated and rehearsed. Yet what truly set her apart was the authenticity she carried into the room, a steadfast belief in justice, a commitment to truth, and an unwavering dignity that refused to bend. This combination of intellect, preparation, and moral clarity created a presence that demanded respect without needing to assert it through force or volume. And when the cameras rolled, all her years of preparation converged into one defining moment. The room was taut with tension as Judge Florence Pan leaned forward, his gaze sharpening with every syllable. Each question he posed was precise, calculated, designed to probe and unsettle. "Ms. Crockett," he began, voice steady but edged with authority, "can you explain how your proposed measures align with federal guidelines? Or are we witnessing a disregard for established procedure?" Crockett's eyes met his calmly. Her voice, measured and clear, did not rise to match his intensity. Instead, she absorbed the challenge, letting the weight of his accusation hang in the air before responding with deliberate care. "Judge Pan," she said, "I am fully aware of the guidelines and their intent. My recommendations are rooted in both compliance and practical outcomes for the communities they affect." A murmur rippled through the audience. Cameras zoomed in on every expression, spectators leaning forward, reporters scribbling furiously, and the moderator fidgeting slightly in his chair, struggling to regain the room's composure. The contrast between Pan's rising tension and Crockett's unflappable poise was palpable. Every interruption, every pointed follow-up question from Pan only highlighted the serenity with which Crockett maintained her stance. He pressed harder, his questions growing more pointed, laced with insinuation. "Some critics argue that your approach lacks foresight. How do you respond to those who claim it undermines accountability?" The room held its collective breath, sensing the crescendo of confrontation building. Crockett did not flinch. Her composure remained a quiet defiance. She took a measured pause, scanning the room, acknowledging the gravity of the scrutiny without conceding any ground. Audience anticipation intensified. A subtle shift in energy flowed through the room. Whispers, the shifting of feet, the quiet rustle of papers. The moderator, aware that the exchange was nearing a tipping point, attempted to intervene, calling for decorum. Yet Pan's insistence, a mix of professional expectation and personal challenge, kept the momentum going. The dialogue was no longer just about policy. It had transformed into a battle of presence, intellect, and resilience. Crockett's measured responses were precise, each sentence calibrated to address the question, while subtly exposing the assumptions behind Pan's framing. Every carefully chosen word emphasized competence and authority, drawing attention to the logic and fairness in her stance. While Pan's questions aimed to provoke hesitation or doubt, Crockett's calm articulation served as a mirror, reflecting confidence and command that the judge could not unsettle. Time seemed to stretch as the exchange reached its peak. Pan's interruptions became sharper, his patience thinning, while Crockett's calm and clarity held firm, magnifying the contrast between intimidation and composure. The room collectively leaned forward, captivated by the clash of strategy and integrity. The tension was palpable, an almost cinematic interplay of power and restraint, intellect and poise, where every second carried the weight of anticipation. And then, she spoke. 7 words that upended the entire exchange. The room fell silent. Every eye remained fixed on Jasmine Crockett as she straightened her posture, her gaze steady, her demeanor unshaken. The weight of the previous exchange hung in the air, but she did not rush. Instead, she allowed a brief pause, just long enough for the audience to feel the gravity of what was coming. Judge Florence Pan, confident in his line of questioning, expected hesitation, or at least uncertainty. He got neither. Crockett began softly, almost conversationally. "Judge Pan, I appreciate the rigor of your questions," she said, her tone measured, calm. "It is precisely that rigor which informs why my proposals are both compliant and practical." Her words were unassuming, yet each one landed with precision, subtly reframing the narrative. The room, still tense, began to lean forward as her reasoning unfolded. She dismantled each point with surgical accuracy. One by one, she addressed the insinuations and assumptions embedded in Pan's questions. Her arguments were rooted in law, data, and precedent, but more importantly, they carried the weight of lived experience and practical insight. "The measures you question are designed to strengthen accountability, not weaken it," she explained. "They ensure transparency while addressing real-world inefficiencies that affect the communities we serve." The logic was undeniable, delivered with a quiet confidence that only years of preparation could cultivate. Pan shifted slightly, a flicker of unease crossing his otherwise composed face. His interruptions, which had previously carried authority, now rang hollow against Crockett's measured cadence. Each pause she took drew attention to the points. He could not rebut, each carefully chosen phrase exposing the gaps in his assumptions. She maintained her composure, never raising her voice, never allowing frustration to show. The contrast between her calm and his subtle discomfort became increasingly evident to everyone in the room. The audience's energy began to shift. Soft murmurs grew into quiet whispers of approval. Cameras captured every reaction, a hand clapping discreetly, a nod of acknowledgement, eyes widening in recognition of her command. Journalists began scribbling frantically, aware that they were witnessing something extraordinary. The tension that Pan had sought to control was now inverted, flowing from Crockett's poise and clarity. She leaned into the rhythm of her argument, using deliberate pauses to allow each point to resonate. "It is essential to understand," she continued, "that accountability is not measured by intimidation or procedural theater. True oversight relies on clarity, fairness, and evidence." A faint gasp swept through the audience, not of shock at her words, but at the unmistakable authority behind them. Even Pan's own aides exchanged subtle glances, sensing the unexpected turn of events. Meanwhile, imagined social media reactions began to form in real time. Tweets flashed across screens. "Jasmine Crockett just schooled Judge Pan, unflappable." Another post. "This is the definition of composure under pressure. Here's Crockett Clapback." Short clips began circulating, highlighting her poised delivery and the judge's subtle faltering. Memes capturing her serene defiance juxtaposed with Pan's rising tension began trending, further amplifying the moment beyond the confines of the room. Crockett's strategy was impeccable. She acknowledged Pan's position without conceding, authority, validating the decorum of the hearing while asserting her own expertise. Each rebuttal was layered, addressing the surface question while simultaneously highlighting the flawed assumptions beneath it. Her reasoning was so clear, so logical, that even those previously skeptical found themselves nodding in silent agreement. As she moved toward the culmination of her response, the room's energy reached a fever pitch. Every word, every pause, every glance was magnified by the anticipation that something definitive was about to land. And then, with the calmest of tones, she delivered the line that would cement the encounter in memory. "Respect is earned through truth, not intimidation." The statement was simple, elegant, and devastating. The room erupted, a mixture of stunned silence and spontaneous applause. Some in the audience whispered, others cheered softly, and a few journalists leaned back in their chairs, eyes wide, realizing the magnitude of what had just occurred. Pan's composure, once a fortress, now seemed shaken, his authority undercut not by volume or aggression, but by Crockett's unassailable clarity and poise. Social media continued to explode. Clips of her 7-word finale were shared endlessly. Hashtags like Docker's Crockett Clapback and Truth Over Intimidation trending within minutes. Memes captured the contrast between her serene, confident posture and Pan's subtle unease. Commentators on late-night news panels replayed the exchange, dissecting her methodical dismantling of his points and praising the calm authority she wielded. Public opinion quickly turned, with allies and neutral observers alike acknowledging the magnitude of her performance. The impact of the moment was more than a mere rebuttal. It became a demonstration of principle over posturing. Crockett had taken what could have been a tense, humiliating situation and transformed it into an exhibition of skill, composure, and moral clarity. Every argument she made resonated beyond the room, reinforcing the message that preparation, dignity, and integrity could triumph over intimidation and perceived authority. And as the room slowly absorbed the full weight of her words, the applause subsided into a charged silence, leaving Pan visibly unsettled. Crockett remained composed, allowing the moment to settle, never needing to raise her voice or exaggerate her triumph. Her victory was in the precision, the clarity, and the undeniable logic that no challenge could undermine. The moment went viral before she even left the room. As soon as Crockett's final words echoed through the room, the reaction extended far beyond the walls of the hearing chamber. Social media erupted in a tidal wave of attention. Hashtags like Crockett Clapback and Pan Exposed shot up the trending lists, shared and reshared by thousands in mere minutes. Clips of her measured, Flawless delivery circulated across platforms: TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, each video looping her calm dismantling of Pan's questions, her poise captivating viewers nationwide. Commentators scrambled to contextualize the moment. Late-night hosts replayed her rebuttal, dissecting every pause, every word, praising the unflinching confidence that had turned the tables in a single, unforgettable exchange. Political analysts noted the broader implications. This was more than just a courtroom victory. It was a demonstration of strength under scrutiny, a blueprint for standing firm when challenged by authority figures. The public response mirrored the intensity online. Citizens tweeted and posted, marveling at her composure and precision. "This is how you answer intimidation," one viral post read, while another shared a clip with the caption, "Jasmine Crockett, calm, sharp, unbeatable. Watch and learn." Memes proliferated, portraying her serene expression next to Pan's subtle unease, emphasizing the stark contrast between intimidation and measured authority. Allies within the political sphere took notice. Fellow congresspersons praised her restraint and intellect, highlighting the way she converted a potentially tense confrontation into a display of integrity and skill. Advocacy groups and civic organizations celebrated the viral moment as an example of how diligence, preparation, and calm resolve can overcome perceived power imbalances. Even those outside her immediate circle acknowledged that Crockett had managed to shift the narrative in a way few could. The ripple effect extended beyond applause and praise. Conversations sparked about the subtle dynamics of gender and race in positions of authority. Commentators and viewers alike discussed how Crockett's experience as a woman of color navigating spaces historically dominated by white men had equipped her to respond with both strength and grace. The encounter became a cultural flashpoint, prompting discussions about representation, equity, and the power of measured strength in political and civic spaces. Political strategists and journalists examined the long-term consequences. They noted how moments like this could redefine credibility and command in public forums. What was once perceived as a challenge to authority had transformed into a showcase of intellectual mastery and moral clarity. Crockett's ability to maintain composure under pressure resonated as an aspirational example, the kind of leadership that transcends partisanship, earning respect across ideological lines. Audience engagement soared. Clips and commentary fueled endless debates online. Every replay of her rebuttal reinforced the narrative. Calm precision could dismantle arrogance without a single raised voice. Public forums, community discussions, and online panels dissected the event, analyzing how Crockett had turned scrutiny into validation of her expertise and character. Even Judge Pan's critics were compelled to acknowledge the moment. Analysts noted that while he relied on experience and authority, the encounter exposed a vulnerability when confronted with unwavering clarity and confidence. The broader public saw it as a lesson in the power of preparation, patience, and intellect, an embodiment of dignity prevailing over intimidation. And yet, while the public consumed every clip and hashtag, what remained unseen to the millions watching unfold in real time was Crockett's personal reflection behind the scenes. Off-camera, away from the flashing cameras and viral clips, she revealed the deeper insight that had guided her through every challenge, every scrutiny, every attempt to undermine her voice. But what Jasmine revealed afterward, off-camera, uncovered an even deeper truth about this encounter. In the quiet that followed the storm of cameras and viral clips, Crockett took a moment to reflect. Speaking in an interview later that evening, she framed the encounter not as a personal victory, but as a lesson in dignity, restraint, and principled leadership. Her words were measured, thoughtful, and deeply resonant, emphasizing that true strength was not in raising one's voice or overpowering others, but in holding fast to truth, fairness, and accountability. Crockett described the confrontation as a mirror for larger challenges in public life. "It isn't about humiliating anyone," she explained. "It's about standing firm when you know what is right, even when the world expects you to falter." She spoke of the importance of preparation, of listening carefully, and of responding not with aggression but with clarity. In every sentence, she underscored the idea that composure and integrity could dismantle arrogance more effectively than anger ever could. Her reflection extended beyond the personal moment. Crockett framed the exchange as emblematic of what America should aspire to: bravery that is disciplined, leadership that is accountable, and public service that is grounded in ethics rather than optics. She reminded viewers that the measure of a leader is not how loudly they assert power, but how steadfastly they uphold principles in the face of scrutiny. When we let integrity guide our actions, she noted, we create a culture where truth prevails over intimidation and fairness triumphs over bias. Throughout her statement, Crockett emphasized the universality of the lesson. Her message resonated with anyone who had faced skepticism, dismissal, or attempts to silence them. She framed her response as both a personal testament and a blueprint for others navigating power dynamics, whether in politics, the courtroom, or everyday life. Courage, she said, is strengthened when paired with preparation. Confidence when tempered with patience. Influence when wielded with care. The impact of her reflection rippled widely. Advocates and ordinary citizens alike saw in her example a reaffirmation of values they could aspire to: accountability without vengeance, poise without passivity, and conviction without compromise. Analysts highlighted how Crockett had transformed a tense, high-stakes moment into a moral exemplar, demonstrating that leadership rooted in principle leaves a lasting impression far beyond any single viral clip. She also reminded viewers that humility and restraint were not weaknesses, but powerful instruments in shaping dialogue and driving change. By choosing calm over conflict, clarity over chaos, she had not only answered a pointed question, but also modeled the kind of ethical leadership that fosters trust, respect, and enduring influence. Her closing reflections tied the confrontation to a larger societal vision. A world where truth is valued over theatrics, where fairness shapes policy and debate, and where individuals are encouraged to act with courage even when under intense scrutiny. Crockett's message transcended politics. It was a universal lesson in integrity, preparation, and the quiet power of principled action. And just when people thought the story was over, her final words reignited the conversation. The room that had once held its breath intense, anticipation now echoed with the weight of Crockett's triumph. What began as silence, a pause pregnant with expectation, transformed into a testament of victory earned through calm, preparation, and unshakable truth. Every camera, every witness, every viral clip carried the resonance of that moment, immortalizing her poise and precision. Judge Florence Pan had questioned her, aiming to unsettle, to dominate the narrative. Yet in that exchange, Crockett had flipped the script entirely. The title of this story says it all. Judge Florence Pan questions Jasmine Crockett. Her response humiliates him instantly. But beyond the headline lies a deeper lesson. Restraint overpowers arrogance. Integrity commands attention, and truth resonates far beyond a single courtroom or panel. For viewers, the takeaway is clear. Witnessing this moment is more than entertainment. It is an affirmation that courage paired with calm, preparation fused with principle, can dismantle even the most calculated attempts at intimidation. It is a call to action. Recognize power, confront it with clarity, and stand firm in the face of scrutiny. If this moment inspired you, amplify it. Share this video. Subscribe to stay connected with stories that honor truth and courage, and lift voices like Crockett's that embody strength, dignity, and principled leadership. As the cameras fade and the room empties, the lingering image remains vivid. Jasmine Crockett walking off with head held high, unshaken, her presence commanding respect, while Judge Pan retreats visibly unsettled. The story may conclude for now, but the impact and the lesson lingers long after the lights go down.